All right, everybody, if you want to settle in. All right. Um, Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm Victoria Duncan, and I am the supervisor of rare books and manuscripts at the Indiana State Library. And in the last year, we've had quite a few patrons come in to look at our collection of account books, and which is pretty typical. They're popular in our collections, but an inordinate number of them this year had very granular questions about how to use them. And these were questions that I could not answer, which as a librarian is no one's favorite. So I started reading a little bit about it, went down a very, very deep rabbit hole and decided I've done all this work, maybe I should share it with you all. I really have fallen in love with the topic. And I know a few people have said, when I'm like, oh, I'm presenting on pre-20th century account books, they're like, riveting. But I think it really is super interesting, and I really do think that you will at the end as well. So what are account books? Account books are records of financial obligation. That's a very nebulous, kind of vague definition, and therein lies the problem. There are collections of what we call account books all over the country, but that really can encompass a very large breadth of different types of financial documents that have been bound. So I'm gonna kind of go over like a high level view of the most common types of books and how they work together, and a little bit about how to read them. But that sort of begs its own presentation. So we have over 300 collections ranging from 1779 to 1975. So it's also some of our oldest records, and over 1,000 books. Some of them are part of collections, some of them are not. And so I'll kind of show you how that changes how you look for them. And yeah, we have them representing businesses from all over the state. The largest, which is the biggest question I get, the largest ones are Conley and Sun General Store from Rossdale, Indiana, which also span the longest amount of time. And the Hyacinth Lasselle collection, which is a very popular one that is the financial records of mostly fur trading in the territories starting in 1779. So really, really interesting stuff. So again, here is what it kind of looks like if you're looking for volumes that are part of a larger collection. If you look at the top there, I'll use my little cursor, the L323. That's a large collection identifier. So if you look at the side and collection organization here, you'll see a series of just personal papers, and at the bottom, you can start to search for the volumes in our finding aid in archive space, which is our collections repository for our archives collections. If you see a V number there at the top, that means that it's just volumes. And every volume has a V number, but some of the V numbers are part of an L number. So it can get a little complicated. I just showed you this little picture to show you. It's also like a big footprint in our, what we call the vault, where we keep our manuscripts collections. That's about a fourth of the physical space. So it's a big part of what we have here, and I would like for people to use them more and understand how to use them. So why are account books interesting? You can use them a lot of different ways. I'm starting with genealogy. That is not my area, so I'm not going to go in a lot of depth about it, but these are frequently a family's only records, where sometimes a family might throw all of their letters onto the fire or into the trash because they don't think that they're interesting. They will sometimes keep account books. Someone that I told about this presentation told me an anecdote about how their grandmother among her things that she kept most dear were photographs and an account book from when there was a family farm that was no longer owned. So people really value the money that families have generated over generations. And so if you're interested in that, if you just want to dump, account books and genealogy into a Google search, you'll get a lot of blogs from people who are genealogists talking about how to use them. And at the most basic level, you can, there's two ways to look for your family. One, you can look for business records of businesses your family might have had, but your family member might also appear in other people's business records. And, maybe you even one person said they just like to look to see, like, my grandfather bought cigarettes for X amount of money, great-great-grandfather in 1859 or whatever. So sometimes it's just for fun too. This is another little fun artifact of the fact that people kept these. There is a lot of marginalia. There's a lot of drawings in between. Kids seem to get a hold of this. So if you see the signature Herschel Miller, these are from the Miller family store, and we don't know exactly when, but Herschel used every single blank page at the end of this, starting with the last, if you see on the left, where they're still doing math to do his homework and just draw. I've seen scripture in between records. So there's a lot of kind of palimpsest that can be interesting too. So history, obviously, in addition to being some of a family's only records, it's some of the country's oldest records, which I've already sort of demonstrated. There are people writing about the history of counting, history of capitalism and commerce. I've got like just a little, like a couple just little examples of articles, some of which I read. I read account books of social technologies, which is interesting. But again, this is getting far, far too deep for this presentation. And then sociology doesn't really surprise me, but I hadn't thought of it necessarily. People talk about sociology from a couple different angles. There are a lot of articles about more like like accounting, bookkeeping as a profession, and the culture of like going into bookkeeping. And I did do a lot of research using books in Haughty Trust that were designed in the 19th century to attract high school boys into the profession. So there's a lot of little paths that way for potential research projects. I did not read this one, but it's quite the title, Bookkeeping, Accounting, Calculative Practice, the Sociological Suspense of Calculation. So you get pretty deep there. Yeah, there's a lot of really cool articles using these very difficult books. And, we're a state entity, so I had to talk about how you can use them for research about the government. Here, in one of our ledgers, you find an entry with them doing business with, this is the Blackford County account. So if you look there, selling candles, there are candles for the sheriff, candlesticks that are going to city government. And also, I heard from someone before this presentation too, that someone from IDEM who uses them to like track like purchases of chemicals and that kind of thing for various projects that they do. So I am going to go over the main three types of books because this is the first step that can kind of confuse people and how they work together. So the day book, it's I forgot to say one thing. I showed the Herschel Miller, the Miller account book. I have it here. Any people can come look at them after this if they want to. Don't rush on, don't everyone rush on it, but you can check. I have one of the books in person for the people who were kind enough to come in person. Okay, so back to day books. It's called a few things, waste book, blotter. Confusingly, sometimes also a journal, and sometimes people did combine books. So you really have to kind of know what you're looking for. And this is just a list down the page of transactions as they occurred with the prices and with whom. Then you have the ledger. So things were transcribed from the daybook periodically, often weekly, into the ledger and ordered by account. Those ones are easiest to tell because you can see the accounts at the top. Then sometimes in certain types of accounting. And I'm going to briefly tell you about the two main types of accounting, but I promise I won't go into too much detail. There was also a journal, which refers back to the ledger, but takes the same information yet again, organizes it by period, often monthly. And that's where they start to get at like profit and loss and the heavier kind of high level accounting. Just a brief list of all the other kinds of books that you'll find in these collections. I'm not going to go over them all in detail. Letter books is the only thing that I mentioned that's not a financial document, but I got some questions about that. Those are copies of outgoing correspondence that would have been bound into a book and will give you clues about business transactions. But if you want a couple big collections where you can find a real breadth of all the different types of financial books that a business might have used. We've got the Ewing family collection and Joseph Bailey. Those are both also like Lasselle, fur trading, land prospecting, gives you a picture of early Indiana settlement. So there's more about the daybook. So there is a picture of the daybook. As you can see, just a big list down the page. This is what you'll want to use, like I said, if you want to see what people were buying, if you want that granular information about the types of things a business was selling and the kinds of things that people are buying. You don't get that same amount of granular information once it's transferred to the other books. They start to call things something like sundries frequently. And the other thing worth knowing is that sometimes collections aren't complete, oftentimes collections aren't complete. So you may only have a daybook or a ledger, and you got to know what kind of information you can really glean from those before you know whether you want to come in. So, and that doesn't deal in balances. Down there at the bottom again is just a list of all the things that you can see these daybooks called. The ledger. These are used in single and double entry bookkeeping. And again, I'll explain more about that in a second. It's spelled a lot of different ways. As I said, organized by account. They start to organize the debits on the left side and the credits on the right. I will explain that in a minute, and it is way less straightforward than you're probably thinking in your head. And parallel lines are drawn under an entry to indicate that they count as balance. So that's an important bit to understand. It includes the one book that includes an index. Since it's organized by account, you can look for the name of the account. And so yeah, as I said, oftentimes things are not transcribed in great detail. And sometimes there's multiple ledgers used at once for different things. So it gets very complicated. This is a picture of a ledger. So you can see on the left there below 1855 would be the credits, and the right are the debits. And that is a balanced account. Then you get into the journal, which is organized by date. That's what the journal looks like. If you see on the very, very far right, these symbols refer back to the ledger. And on the left there, you'll see numbers that there are things called folio pages that refer to the pages and ledgers. Again, out of scope for this, but is really, really super interesting. And I have not yet found a source that tells me all of the different symbols that were used. I found some in multiple ledgers that I cannot find. And I looked through a lot of books, a lot in HathiTrust. So I'm still trying to figure that out. There's a closer up there, yeah. So that's something I'm still trying to learn about. So here's two quick examples from what I've said. Can anyone guess what the left one is? Daybook, yeah, just list of all the transactions for that day. And on the right, can we tell? I only said it for a second. It's the index. So it's an index. It's a daybook. So that's the ledger. If you see an index, it's a ledger. I'm sure there's probably an exception to every single thing I say, but by and large. So here's the exciting part. Single versus double entry bookkeeping. Obviously, I'm not going to teach you exactly how to do this, but I'm going to tell you kind of what you need to know. The reason why you need to know what kind of bookkeeping they were using is so you know what kind of books to expect and to look for. Are these books missing, or did they just not use them? Wait, what did I do? Okay, so single entry is just a simple one-sided bookkeeping. It's one of those definitions that don't really make sense unless you know the other definition. So double entry records equal and opposite entries. So it looks at, the best way to describe it is it looks at things from both directions. So like I use cash to buy a pair of shoes from this account, and then it's listed as this account is debited the pair of shoes towards this cash account. So everything is listed twice, going in both directions, which I will show you examples. So debit is shortened as DR, credit is shortened as CR. It means different things, completely different things, depending upon the context and what books you're using, which is so hard to wrap your mind around. It's not the way that we use debit and credit here necessarily. So the top definition is probably more what we were thinking. It's a transfer from an account to a person. Debit is a transfer from an account of a person to another account, and a credit is in reverse. But in the case of cash accounts, a debit is a receipt of money, and credit is money paid. And everything that I've written and every example that I give you is transcribed precisely from the books to make sure that I'm not messing it up, because it gets so hard to wrap your mind around from a modern perspective. I asked the help of someone who works in accounting, and he was like, I can't. So this little inset I took from one of those books that I talked about that was used for high school boys. Generally boys went into this in the 19th century. So this is meant for a high school student, and I'm still like plugging away at it, trying to understand all their examples. But so what it means there, when to debit, cash, when you receive it. Debit to a person, when you trust that person. So that's kind of what we would think of as a credit. Like you debit the person when they have not paid you yet. And debit a person when you pay someone else. When to credit, cash when you pay it out. Credit a person when he trusts you. So when you have bought something and haven't paid yet. And to a person when he pays you. So has everyone got it yet? So the most important thing to understand, to start to kind of get to the bottom of this, is that every single thing has value in this type of bookkeeping. So when I buy a pair of shoes, right, I think of it as I paid this business money for the pair of shoes. That money is gone. That's just debited from my account. If I use a debit card, it's taken away, it's gone. To them, that is a transaction between the value of cash and the value of the pair of shoes. So everything is assigned a value, and everything goes both ways. So that's how the value is transferred back. Isn't it exciting? So here's some examples. In the top one is hard, so I'm just gonna say it, and if you don't get it, I get that. So paying rent would be a credit from an account and debit to the landlord, and then the opposite way of writing is the landlord has a credit from the rental account and a debit to the bank where the check goes. Still working on that one a little bit myself. If you buy a bicycle, that's a debit from bicycle. So that's how you'll see it written, debit bicycle, and a credit from a cash account. Then, as if this weren't bad enough, you get into contra accounts, which is a balance that opposes an account. So sometimes that it's used as a replacement term for credit if it's balancing a debit, but it can mean several things. That's really the most salient way to think of contra accounts, is that's how you start to get to things like profit and loss that aren't exactly easy to get at just by balancing an account. Some things appreciate in value, so you've got to add a contra to it, or depreciate. So here is an example that I think is the most easy to understand. At the top there, you've got A.B. Johnson, and that's a day book there. So at the top there, you've got A.B. Johnson. A.B. Johnson bought some tables from us and chairs for $35.25. Same day, T.M. Shapley, so that's a debit. A.B. Johnson buying those tables and chairs. The next day, or the same day, T.M. Shapley, we buy some provisions from T.M. Shapley, the essentials, tea and sugar, and that's a credit for $2.81. A month later, We pay TM Shapley for our provisions. And then now what you'll start to see is the transfer to the ledger. So we were transferring these things a month later into the ledger. A.B. Johnson, you see there, we don't say that it's tables and chairs, it's just sundries. A.B. Johnson bought sundries from us, $35.25. We haven't gotten payment for that, so there's nothing in the credit side. Then on the bottom, and on the bottom there, as I said, we paid TM Shapley, and so on the left is our payment, on the right are the sundries, and that double line again at the bottom means that we are even Steven. So like I said, double entry calculates gains and losses by debiting funds spent on purchases and crediting profits. I probably said too many times that it's recorded once and then again. From a practical sense, to really drive this home, it can be defined as using both the ledger and the journal. That is double entry account keeping, is that that high level account keeping too. Single entry account keeping doesn't use the journal. Books were closed monthly, so debits that were not balanced was considered losses, and credits, any balances that we still had are considered gains. And then they would be squared away and started on a new page as they would consider it a new account. Yeah, okay, so I'm just gonna do a couple simple ones and then move on to kind of what I'm gonna do with all this. So here's the most simple one that was given to the high school kids that I read, showing them that if you get money as a birthday gift, so $5 from one person, $3 from another person, and then $2.50, that goes on the left side in your debits. And then you buy some skates and a kite and some other things, and that goes onto the right as your credit. So once again, debit cash whenever our business receives money, and credit cash whenever our business pays money. Don't panic, I'm not gonna go over this. I just wanted to show you how, what a really complicated contra account looks like. I did try, I made Casey from the Bureau come into my office and I started to explain this, and I upset a few people and took some things out because it's too much math. It's too much math. This is a contra account from the Lasselle collection. And when I started my journey learning all this, I actually thought that it was just the French word for credit, because the early Lasselle accounts are all in French, which makes it even more difficult to read. And you can see there again, see the like real texty part on the right. People just wrote in the middle between. This was something afterwards where someone wrote in between the entries. People historically in rare books and archives don't like to waste things. People, paper was expensive, books were expensive. People used them how they could. So, if you want to look for account books in a very broad way, you can just kind of toss account book into archive space. There's the URL at the bottom. As I said, we use archive space as our repository for our archives, and you'll get a lot of results. You can try to search for certain counties and locations as well, and we do have filters. But for this one, it probably is a good idea just to contact us if you're looking for something specific. This is the Lasselle collection. So what I started to realize as I was doing my research is that, each of our collections is processed at a different level of detail, as is the case everywhere. And so when you look at like the Hyacinth Lasselle books, we just have everything as a count book. And these have, this is a large collection that also includes papers, like I said. I gave you the volume number there, but there's an L number because it has It's not just comprising account books, but we have a lot of finding aids that just say account book, account book, account book, and the range of dates. And it looks like noise. And this is one of the questions that I get. So like why, for instance, does it say account book 1784 and then 1784 to 1800? Now that could be part of the year, but there's other ones that like, so 1784 to 1800 versus 1786 to 1787. Why do these dates not like are they not contiguous? And it's because they're different types of books. So a day book takes up a ton of space, as you can imagine, because it's every single detail of what people bought. But the ledgers and the journals don't take up as much space. So what I would like to do, so that's just a closer up. See if you can see how it's kind of hard to figure out what that is. I would like it to look like that. So you can actually look and see at least daybook, ledger, daybook, and that way researchers, if they're honing in on different things, if they're just looking for by account, they can start to pull only the ledgers, or at least even if they want to look at everything, they kind of know where to start and which direction to go. We do have some collections that we processed at this level. We just had the time for whatever reason when we were doing the processing. So you can see here the Joseph Bailey collection, which I talked about before, is some more early, trading and land prospecting books. Do have like say like ledger, journal, daybook, etc. So we don't have to relook at everything. But I would like to go through and kind of chip away at this, especially like Lasselle, which is going to be very difficult because, as I said, they're the oldest ones. They're in French, and reprocess them with some more detail. We also have stuff like this. This is the Campbell and Mercer Company account book. We don't always have information about where the business operated or any other information other than just what we can find inside, and that's just the name of the business. And that one, the example that I gave you about Blackford County, that I dug through to try to figure out where that book is, and now I know it's probably from Blackford County for obvious reasons. So there are clues, but it takes an incredible amount of time to go through and start researching and figure out what some of these books are if they didn't come with any information. But I would like to chip away at stuff, maybe look at the ones that are pull stats and look at the ones that are used most by researchers to start. I also wanted to make a guide that shows kind of how many I pulled. I exported at least like the collections and tried to order them by number of books. A lot of them are singles, and I said, in some ways it might be most useful to identify the singles so people know if they're even worth coming, if it's even going to have the information that is that they want to make it worth coming in to see. This is not correct, though. I had a last-minute catastrophic sorting fiasco where I didn't put expand all, and I just put it up here anyway. But this is what it will look like, and then identify the county and city if possible, so that when people ask for these, they can have a nice little guide. This is just to prove that we're not sleeping on the job. A lot of people don't process these account books at the level that I am hoping to get some of these processed. If you look, this is Yale, and if you look on the side here where they have their container inventory and their finding aid, it's just the name of the person, or because people had just personal accounts, and the years. They don't go tell you if it's a ledger or a day book. University of Connecticut, same. University of Pennsylvania is great, though. They do actually order everything by the type of book. So I'm not the only one who thinks this is useful to do. So they probably just had somebody else who also kind of fell in love with the topic, frankly. So I wanted to end, of course, by shouting out Indiana Memory. We don't have many of ours digitized at all. They're big. They're bulky, they're hard to digitize, and especially if you use content DM and you have to use a compound object, are complicated to upload. So, but you can plop account book, especially if you're just looking to browse and fact check the things that I'm saying. You can plop account book into Indiana Memory, the state's digital repository for digital collections around the state, and pull up some account books. This is also, so I put Digital Indie up here. This is partly just a personal thing. I worked at IndiePL many years ago, and we did a project where we scanned the IMPD, IFD, so the police, fire, Parks and Rec, and the Indianapolis Public Schools, everything we could find. And there are a lot of particular IPS logbooks and various ledgers, so things like teacher salary ledgers and things like that. So that's another place if you want to see different types of these kinds of records, you can go there and find some really interesting stuff. These are my resources. I won't go over everyone. But the HathiTrust is the main place where if you want to find, because you can't just look up any bookkeeping resource because you're going to get a lot of information from the past 125 years or so that like doesn't mean anything. So what you'll want to do is go to HathiTrust, the link at the bottom, and search for bookkeeping, single or double entry bookkeeping, that kind of thing, ledgers, and then you can find just a wealth of contemporary books that teach you how to do this. If you are like me and actually want to learn how to read these books in any meaningful way. So I also wanted to talk very briefly about, we moved our reading room from, for many years, we were just on the second floor on the other side, so like the similar room, but on the other side. But we recently moved our reading room to the Pamela J. Bennett Historical Marker Center, and we're very happy there. So we're down there in the bureau, and we have a nice little reading room there. We have gone to requesting appointments. So if you want to request, logbooks or anything else, the Manuscripts email at the bottom is the best one, just because if I don't happen to be in office, you'll always get someone quickly if you email the Manuscripts email, or you can email me. I forgot to put mine up there, but I've got cards down here. But we do request now, if you can, 48 hours in advance to see the collections, and we are open every second Saturday, and we need 2 weeks, 10 business days to get everything prepared. It's a staffing issue. So thank you, everybody. What questions? And please don't ask me like very, very detailed math questions. I just sort of got to where I really understand this all. But I think it's super interesting, and I've like, my brain is tingling in a way that it hasn't tingled since, I don't know, high school math or something. So, okay, so what question? Okay, Michelle's got a question for me. Oh, I couldn't hear, so what? Oh, yes, so she's asking if that's where the bookstore did used to be there. It is no longer. We didn't eject the bookstore. The bookstore was gone long before we moved in there. But we do sell other things at the Nook, which is just right when you come into the library. Yeah, in some contexts, yeah. But yeah, it completely depends on what book you're using. And the credits and debits, I still sit in my office and like beat my head over. Because now what I need to do is actually start using the books. I've used a lot of like examples from texts that have been transcribed and the examples I gave you are much easier than when you actually are looking at that old script. So, but yeah, I encourage you to come up and look at our little ledger there. We have a daybook and a journal too, if you want to really get into it. Any questions in person? Don't feel obligated to. Hi. Yeah, because even that's a good question. So she's asking if, in instances where there are identified like ledgers and journals, if you can still just plop account book in there. There will be somewhere in the record when you're doing a full text search where it'll say account book. So that's like kind of the easiest one to just start with. Okay, and yeah, hopefully I'll have a guide soon, as I said too. Okay, Michelle has another question from online. Oh, that's a huge question. Yeah, this is the one area where we actually have the least donor information. We've had a lot of these. We just celebrated our bicentennial. We're 200 years old, and a lot of these collections have very little information. But yeah, we do take donations from the public, and particularly business records are something that we actively seek. I just got a couple collections from the archives that are transferring here as well. So, okay, is that it? Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I hope everybody has a little bit more time to finish the rest of their lunch. Thanks, everybody.